Hey everyone, how you doing? Good Dog says, what do you call a fly without wings? A raisin. I don't know. What do you call a fly without wings? Want to do a quick update while at the beginning of this live stream. Hi everybody, by the way. First of all, how to support the channel. I have got on my website, gordondimmack.com, I've got if you click how to support from the menu on the top, it will go through all the ways that you can support me. Obviously, we've got a link to Patreon on there, should you wish to become a monthly patron. But I've also set up, I had a couple of emails from people saying that they want to send money to me directly to the bank. You can't send it directly to the bank at the moment. However, I have set up a facility to do a monthly donation on PayPal. £1, £5, £10 or more if you want to go more. And I've also got links on there to Bitcoin. And I've had a few people send me Bitcoin over the last month. Honestly, that is my preferred method. And I've looked at the numbers, and directly through PayPal I think is the cheapest, and Bitcoin is not far behind. Obviously, Patreon is a third because they've got fees for Patreon and for PayPal if you go through Patreon, and then by far the worst is the super chat on here. So if you use the Streamlabs and put a note in, I should get the message on the note, or send a direct donation through PayPal, then attach a note to that. I'll get that note. I'll get a notification and be able to read it out. So yeah, that's the way. For those unfamiliar with Bitcoin, setting it up is really easy. Setting up an account for Bitcoin that takes a couple of days just to sort out the bank details. I did mine through Coinbase. Set up my wallet through Coinbase, and the details are obviously below this stream and on my website as well. So wanted to give a quick update on that because I have had a few people ask me before I came on air. By the way, you've got to see this. Before I came on air, RT tweeted this out earlier at 5:51 p.m. Just noticed this because Off Guardian quoted it out, and they said failure to deliver Brexit would produce a yawning gap between Parliament and the people. And what they're actually doing there is they're quoting the words of Liam Fox. So perfectly okay for them to do that. They're quoting Liam Fox. Carol Cadwallader of The Garden, she has a different view. She doesn't think that that's okay at all. She says Russia Today is just doing what Russia Today does, using its UK broadcasting license to disseminate Putin-paid-for propaganda in the heart of our information bloodstream. So, quoting Liam Fox accurately and putting quotes before as a lead-in to an article about something Liam Fox said, according to Carol Cadwallader, is disseminating Putin-paid propaganda into the heart of our information bloodstream. Well done. It was the Off Guardian, I think. Yeah, it was the Off Guardian who caught that. I don't listen much to what Carol Cadwallader says, so I rely on other people catching their BS, which is what that is. And they correctly say 6 weeks ago her paper ran an entirely substantiated story smearing Julian Assange. Carol never called that propaganda. Interesting, isn't it? Interesting. I found that interesting anyway. So, hi everyone. Bari Weiss says, I nuke Wales. Yeah, that's something I will be talking about later today as well. Only 8 likes, says Sinead. Yeah, come on, guys. And ladies and gents, only 8 likes. I noticed somebody downvoted it as well. I bet you I know who that is. Gordon, please don't go up against Navarra Media. I like them too. I like Navarra Media. I don't trust them yet, but I like them. I don't trust them yet, but trust is earned, not given. But what I've seen so far has been pretty good. There's a young girl from Navarra Media. I've forgotten her name now. She's been on the BBC a few times, and a young lady as well. very educated, highly educated, very good on the issues, very good on current affairs, very good on, I think she answered one question about law really well, I saw once. She's great. I've forgotten her name now. But she's from Novara Media. However, I think the exuberance and her being so youthful gets in her way a few. I've seen it I've seen a couple of times her almost celebrating the fact that she got an answer right. But yeah, Novara Media, nothing wrong with Novara Media from what I can tell so far. One prick downvoted, says Nemo says. Yeah, I bet you I know who that is. I bet you I do know who it is. Thanks everybody. Yeah, liking the stream, commenting, it all really helps, because obviously when you're live, I talked about how algorithms work last week. The more people like it, the more people interact, the higher it goes up in the algorithm, the higher it goes up on the trending streams, that sort of thing. The more people watch, and it all helps me out. Grace Blakely says, Mark F, question mark. Grace Blakely I've mentioned on a couple of videos actually, I think. Yeah, a couple of videos. She's very good. She's she makes the case for the left's case for Brexit, which is something I obviously advocate for as well. Keith Durant says, so first one on the Skripal scene was a ... I'm not going to complete that because I'll ruin it for people, because that, Keith, is my first story. Hi everyone. So I've been keeping you up to date on the Skripal story and all the stuff that's in the newspapers, or rather the stuff about the Skripals that not necessarily in the newspapers, and that's what we need to keep our eye on. This, however, has been in the newspapers recently. 10 months, remember, after the Skripal's poisoning. This was 10 months after we only just found this out, because I made a boo-boo, actually. I reported in the past that this guy, Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey, was the first person to actually stumble upon the Skripals and in their comatose state on that park bench in Salisbury. And we all said, oh, that's a stroke of luck, isn't it? Being a detective sergeant being the first one to see them. Well, as it turns out, no, it wasn't. It wasn't Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey at all. And it seems that solves the mystery as to what we were being told, that Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey was actually infected with Novichok, or Novichoked at the Skripal's home. That's one story that I saw recently that was floated. So apparently it wasn't him. It was somebody else, and we're going to go to the always excellent Moon of Alabama for this story, because they have done some brilliant work on not just the Skripals but other stories, Russiagate as well. And they say there's coincidence. So it wasn't Nick Bailey, Detective Sergeant. It was the chief nurse of British Army was the first to arrive at the Novichok's Skripal scene. The chief nurse of the British Army. On March the 4th, 2018, the British-Russian double agent Sergei Skripal wasn't a double agent. He was a British agent. He wasn't a double agent. Everybody gets that wrong. And his daughter Yulia were found incapacitated on a bench in Salisbury. The British government asserts that they were affected by a chemical poison of the so-called Novichok group. This case led to a diplomatic conflict as Britain accused Russia of an attempt to kill the Skripals. No evidence was provided by the British government to support these accusations, and the Skripals have since vanished. Yes, that's the age-old question, isn't it? Where are the Skripals? Today, an intriguing new detail of the case came to light. Spire FM, a local radio station in Salisbury, reports of a young woman, Abigail McCourt, who was given a Lifesaver Award for her involvement in the Skripal case. So that would be the young lady here getting the reward, and that's her mum, the nurse. That's her. Apparently the young lady found them on the bench, alerted her mother, and they were in the area because they were out having a family meal. And this is a colonel, a chief nurse, a colonel in the army, who's got an OBE. Fortunate, isn't it, that people walking past just happen to be a nurse, trained in treating patients who have been infected with deadly diseases. I know if I ever get Novichoked, I think that would be one of my first picks to actually be the first person to find me, wouldn't you? Or the second person to find me. This article continues. In 2014, the Daily Mail reported on Colonel Alison McCourt's deployment as British mission leader to Sierra Leone, where she helped fight the highly infectious Ebola disease. This is like me going to America and coming down ill and falling unconscious on the floor with the Mataba virus, and the first person to come wandering by is Dustin Hoffman's character out of Outbreak. That's the equivalent, basically, of what we're being led to believe is true here. According to that report, McCourt is married and has 2 children. Her son must by now be 14. Apparently they were going out and they were celebrating her son's birthday in the area. I wonder if she was taking part in those the largest ever chemical and biological weapons drills that were happening on Salisbury Plain not far from those. Finished within 24 hours of the Skripals being poisoned. And if she was taking part, and that was why she was in the area. They don't actually say that in this article there. Just a thought. Neither Colonel McCourt or her daughter were affected by the extremely dangerous Novichok. Well, if they weren't affected, it wasn't extremely dangerous, was it? 1 in 5 times it is. We always must remember, Dawn Sturgis died as a result of this debacle. An innocent person died. But what about the other persons, her son and her husband, who were also at the scene? What were they doing? No additional information about the McCourts has so far came to light, say the Moon of Alabama. They continue, and actually this ties in with something I've been talking about recently. They say there are also many indications that the case is related to other British government operations. Indeed, the whole Skripal incident might well have been staged. I've led to this with the recent revelations from the dumps of the documents by Anonymous on the Integrity Initiative. Article continues. Pablo Miller, the MI6 agent who recruited, handled and befriended Sergei Skripal, also worked for Orbis Limited. Orbis is the company of the former MI6 agent Christopher Steele, who was paid by the Hillary Clinton campaign to write the dirty dossier about alleged Trump connections to Moscow. Soon after the Skripal incident happened, the British government released a D-notice that prohibited British media from further mentioning Pablo Miller's name and thereby the relation of the two cases. All of that there is 100% factually true, and none of it you will hear on the mainstream media. Now, do you not agree that the British public deserve to know this? Do you not agree that this is not putting anybody's life in danger? This is not putting any spies' lives or their family lives in danger. This looks like a complete cock-up and a cover-up. That's what it looks like. So if you want it to not look like a cock-up and a cover-up, I suggest you actually come out and tell the truth, because what we've heard so far, pretty far from it. Long before the Skripal incident happened, an experienced Russian scholar asserted that the Steele dossier was written by someone trained by Soviet intelligence. It is thus quite possible that Sergei Skripal, the former Russian spy, was an informant or even author of the Steele dossier about Trump. This is something that we're desperate to know, whether Sergei Skripal was actually involved in the collation of the salacious allegations against Trump in that dossier. Article continues. The recently exposed British military intelligence operation Integrity Initiative has shown extensive interest in the media echo the Skripal case had in various countries. Currently, one of its papers lists Pablo Miller, the Skripal handler, as a contact of the Integrity Initiative's leader, Colonel Chris Nigel Donnelly. This is something that I've reported on other videos about the Integrity Initiative. There is additional suspicion that the Integrity Initiative, whose primary function to stoke Russophobia, was one of the brains behind the Skripal incident. The initiative was also involved in the Steele dossier and the Russophobic anti-Trump campaign. This is why, this is why I'm reading it. This is outlining why I believe all of these cases, the Skripal case, the Russiagate case, and quite possibly the Syria Duma chemical attack that turned out not to be a chemical attack, thanks to the great work of Robert Fisk and the guy from Pearson Sharp from One American News. Wouldn't be surprised if they're all linked, and it wouldn't be surprised if all roads lead back to Pablo Miller and ultimately Christopher Steele and the Integrity Initiative, because he's in the documents. Why is he there? British ambassador Andrew Wood, a former British ambassador to Moscow, is employed by the Institute for Statecraft, a shadowy parent organisation of the Integrity Initiative funded by the Ministry of Defence and Foreign Office. It was Andrew Wood who helped to disseminate the Steele dossier to US Senator John McCain. What a hero that guy was, John McCain, great patriot to the country, wasn't a war criminal at all. McCain then gave the dossier to FBI Director James Comey. The FBI used the dossier first to get FISA warrants to spy on the Trump campaign and, after Comey was fired, to launch a counterintelligence investigation against Trump himself, all of which they are saying there all ties into the testimonies of people like Bill Binney, who has said that this is going on, and others that I have covered multiple times in other videos. They do go on to hypothesize about what could have happened here, but I'm not going to go into that because it is literally just a theory. But that is the latest. The woman who administered first aid for the Skripals, fortunately for the Skripals, just happened to be a colonel with an OBE in the British Army who was alerted to their plight by her daughter while they were out celebrating her son's birthday. And that's the story now as it is. I suppose we'll see whether people laugh at it too much as to whether that story changes or not. That's usually what happens. But there you go, there's the update. I can't wait for the truth to come out about this. I really can't. I hope it eventually does. Fucking colonel in the army. A colonel. A chief nurse. With a history of treating deadly diseases. Hi everyone. Sinead says, sorry, a week till payday, wish it could be more. Thanks very much, Sinead. Every bit helps. I keep saying that. Every single dollar helps. I'm being very, very careful. Most of what I'm doing is most of what I got is invested straight back in, equipment, but every dollar helps. And all the equipment has been bought from your donations, all of it, even down to, the crappy microphones that I had after a couple of months of doing this, even down to the crappy background that I used to do with that I just hung on my wall behind me. It was all paid for by you. Can't do it without you. So yeah, even $2 doesn't matter, Sinead. Thank you very much. I appreciate it immensely. Phil James, hi Phil. Roll a blunt for me, mate. Please start the Dimmack network, he says. If you go to my website, I've actually got there's a tab on it for recommended viewing, and when I've got a list of people on YouTube that I actually follow. And if ever something's newsworthy or a progressive outlet, I only like independent stuff or stuff from RT, actually, strangely enough. But yeah, I like any videos. It goes into a playlist, and then that playlist is updated on my website. So yeah, it's loaded. You'll get videos from Abby Martin and Jimmy Dore and Carl Klinsky, Mike Figueredo, RT, and others as well. Vanessa Beeley I'll put on there, and basically any videos that cover current affairs or any great documentaries that I watch on YouTube, I'll put them into that playlist. So I sort of have started it, Phil. Thanks very much for your donation, mate. Appreciate it. Hey up, Bob. Hey up, Lawrence. Gordon, will you have a guest on? I have a pre-recorded interview with a Russian bot tonight that I will get to in a bit. That reminds me, actually, I better send him a message. Sorry to do this, people. I better send him a message because I did promise him my. I'll let him know when it's about to go, or half hour be later before I go live. So copy link location. Russian bot, yes. Okay, how's that done? Kinky, Gordon, your tweet featured on Jimmy Dawes chat today. Yeah, it did. He did a video and highlighted it as well. I'm glad he did that because I actually put some thought into that tweet as well. Usually I just write them. That tweet I actually sat there and thought, what do I want to say here? And they really did choke on their 5-star donor bought breakfast. So yeah, love that guy. Rex Merriweather says Al Jazeera seems to be doing okay, all right. All of the networks are all right. All of the main ones, even though I rag on the BBC, they still do some good work. You've just got to know, you've got to be able to, I've talked about this before, Abby Martin describes it as going through from one network to the next and weaving your way through the bullshit to try and get at actually what the truth is. If you read Al Jazeera, for instance, on Syria, they will still be quoting the same people as the rest of them are. They will still be quoting the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. They will still be quoting Bellingcat. They will still be quoting DFR Labs. They will still be quoting White Helmets. They're still quoting all these organisations that we think are completely dodgy and part of this sort of propaganda construct. So yeah, you've got to, with Al Jazeera and the rest of them, you've got to, they do some good work, but you've got to understand that they'll only do good work if it's in their own interests. So you have to sort of weave your way through the corporate media. I hope that sort of makes sense. Patrick, thanks very much for that, mate. Cheers, Gordon, he says. Thank you very much for your donations, everyone. Yeah, so the Rex, yeah, they're all the same. You have to, I've been doing it long enough now. You get attuned to, you know, I know what the BBC are going to write about something almost even before I read it. Almost even before, if it's on Syria, or it's on Julian Assange, or it's on Russiagate, I know what's going to be in that article. Almost I can write it section by section myself, just because of the way their articles are structured all the time. They're all so similar. And it's the same for all of them. Rebecca, we had small snow, but 4 avalanches in 2 days, says Lawrence Taylor. Yeah, Switzerland, Lawrence is in. We've got snow over here today. Out the window. It's sticking! My dog was very excited. She's hoping that she's going to be able to go out and play in the snow tomorrow. Cher Burkhart says, Gordon, will you have more guests on your show in the future? Hi from Canada, Saskatchewan. Yes, Cher. Interviewing people is an art. Interviewing people is something that I know I'm going to have to learn. I totally understand that I'm a complete novice at it. I do have a structure of what I like to try and have short 20, 30-minute segments rather than long hour, 2 hours. We'll see how it goes, but I'm going to try and do one a week and try and get one guest on per week. I have a big long list of people to get to, and we'll see. But I think I've got okays. I think I'll be able to. I've got enough at the moment for the next 2 or 3, maybe 4 weeks. So we'll see how it goes. But just bear with me, everyone. I'm not the best interviewer in the world, especially if we're talking about, you know, if I'm interviewing somebody who I'm not politically aligned with, or somebody I don't get on with. it's going to be difficult, but we'll see. I'm willing to learn and give it a shot. I think it's something that I'm going to have to do if I want to do this seriously and incorporate it into sort of the format that I've got. So yeah, there'll be more. No problem, Cher. If I see a question, I'll answer it. I had somebody the other day, they just over and over. You never answered my question on this guy, did you? You never answered my question on this guy. Over and over, every video. It's like, never fucking saw your question, pal. Chill out, chill out. I didn't say that to him. I just ignored him, obviously, because he was an arsehole. About you, I would love to see a monthly or bi-monthly catch-up video with Jamal. Yeah, maybe bi-monthly, I don't know. Well, I mean, speak to Jamal about it. I'm sure, you know, I think next time it'll be my turn to go on his show. That's if he wants me on. But yeah, he's great, Jamal. He's good friend. Good friend, great guy. Bari Weiss, she's a neo-lib APAC spokesperson, so Sinead. I'll get to her. But first, I want to get to something else. Because I wasn't going to actually talk about this subject for a couple of weeks. I was going to give it 4 weeks and then give an overall view, but I feel after last week I've got to address it. Let me just make sure that I've got everything lined up here. So, yeah.
But Nish, as a non-politician...
Okay. Gordon Omnibus says highly unlikely. Yeah, I've got a few. This is going to be quite long as well. I might get like 3 videos out of this one. We'll see. Oh, I was going to burp then. Sorry. Hi everyone. So last week, Fiona Bruce became the new chair of Question Time, and full disclosure, I like Fiona Bruce. She was once in an elevator with Jeremy Clarkson on Top Gear, and Jeremy Clarkson said she had rather a nice bottom, which I thought was quite sexist, but I probably agree. I wasn't going to do a video on it though, on the episode that I saw last week, even though it was very interesting. I thought what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait 4 or 5 weeks and do an overview of the whole thing, and just to see where the Question Time has actually changed, because obviously there were massive problems with it. And what I've seen in the last 2 weeks can be described quite literally, as I put there in the title, as the good, the bad, and the ugly. First of all, I want to get to the good, and the good revolves around a couple of things. First of all, the good. Last week, Fiona Bruce, and I know some people are not going to like that assessment, but to be quite honest, last week she was excellent. I thought for a first episode that I thought things are going to change very quickly, or she's going to get the boot, put it that way. She was challenging with the people on the panel. She didn't let anybody off the hook from answering at all a question. If somebody was asked a question, she pressed them if they didn't give an answer, which I thought she was excellent. She was tough with everybody last week, everybody equally. She was tough with them. And she didn't stand for any waffle either. You know how politicians like to waffle. She didn't stand for any waffle, which I thought was really refreshing. So that was one of the good things I thought from last week, was Fiona Bruce's first appearance. It was excellent. It really was. The next good thing on that show is this guy, Ramesh Ranganathan. I'm just joking. It's Nish Kumar, of course, and he will find that funny if ever he sees that. That's the second time I've seen him on Question Time, and the first time I saw him on Question Time, I thought it was so good. I made a video about it because he was talking about Yemen and Saudi Arabia and the morality of it all, which nobody does talk about on the TV, but he did, which is really unsurprising if you watch his show on BBC called The MASH Report. It is probably the finest comedy political show on television. I really can't stress it highly enough. There were some great comedians on there. Ellie Taylor is one of my favourite comedians on sort of the mainstream, and he does a great job. Like I say, the first video I saw him on, the first time I saw him on Question Time, I did a video about him, and this time he was on this week as well. Last week as well, the first show with Fiona Bruce, and he stole the show once again. Let me just show you this, because I thought this was excellent. Remember this? They were all talking about Brexit at the time, about what was going to happen with the deal, whether the deal was going to get through, and this is what Nish responded after they had all had their little talks. It was 20 minutes in before he said his first thing, and this was how he addressed the studio, which I thought was fantastic.
Right, Nish, as a non-politician, along with Millie on this panel, what's your view from what you've just heard? You'll be Prime Minister.
I'll do Brexit. I'll do. I'm not a million miles away from being Nigel Farage or Boris Johnson in that I'm a tedious blowhard who makes occasional appearances on comedy panel shows. And I've offered absolutely no detail on how to execute Brexit, right? Because isn't the problem that we still don't know what Brexit is? We still have absolutely no idea what it involves. Every time we try and pin it down to a definition, it seems to slip away from us again. We're told it's about returning parliamentary sovereignty. Yet, when the Speaker intervenes to, in my view, return sovereignty to Parliament, we're told it's about returning sovereignty to the will of the people. When we're asked if we could have a second vote for the people or a general election, we're told it was not about the will of the people, it was about the will of the people that one time, and now the people need to shut up for the rest of their lives.
Are you keeping up with all this?
It is mind-bending how little detail anyone who has been tasked with delivering Brexit, or more importantly, anyone who campaigned for Brexit, has offered at any point. And the country is kind of ticking over into an apocalypse. And this is the third time I've been on this programme in 12 months, and this is the same thing. I am trapped just in an endless loop. I feel like I'm in a remake of Groundhog Day directed by Ken Loach. It's just round and round and round. It's never going to end.
Let's hear from the woman about.
Now, I don't know whether you like him as a comedian or not, but I think he encapsulated the mood last week perfectly. That really was how we all felt, and that was the wrong slide. Sorry about that. But I want to go on because it wasn't the only thing he said on that. Now, there was a columnist for the Times on there who made the case to bring back stop and frisk, which I'm sure you'll agree is a pretty racist policy. And this is the way Nish responded. I'm hoping I've got this queued up correctly.
I am so angry with the two responses from this panel. I'm angry with James because he said he wasn't going to politicise this question, and then immediately said it's Sadiq Khan's fault.
No, I
and I'm furious.
It is ultimately the most political of issues, and so therefore we have to.
And I'm furious with Melanie that she would sit in defence of stop and search, which is a racist policy, and that she would attack the McPherson reports and its attempts to drive institutional racism out of the police force. I'm absolutely, as a Londoner, I am absolutely incensed and disgusted by both of those responses.
Just a point here, every time Nish spoke on that panel, every time he got an ovation like that. He was on point with everything. Politicians don't talk like him. Somebody needs to have a word with him. He'd be good as an MP, but I think his comedy career is going too well.
The one thing I want to talk about is Karen McCluskey in Glasgow and the systems that they put in place. Having spent time in Boston and looked at how that city worked to reduce its gang and weapon-based violence.
Now, the reason he's bringing that up there, just for context, is they were also talking about the amount of knife crime going up in London and the gang violence. And what he's brought up there is McCluskey, and just listen to how he dismantles, how he frames this. He doesn't frame it like the politicians do. And if the politicians frame things like this, people would quickly get on board. Quickly.
She had a kind of three-pronged approach, a zero-tolerance police policy, but also, and crucially, there was a focus on creating economic opportunity within these communities. They want to talk about with charities that work to sort of put victims in touch with people who are involved in gang violence, to kind of build empathy within the communities. But ultimately, this is all about economics. You have to provide opportunity, funding and resources for young people, right? It's not just cuts the police numbers. It's not just cuts the police numbers. We are talking about a £736 million cut between 2010 and 2017 on youth services across the United Kingdom. How do you think that is not going to have an impact? And it's disgusting that you two would sit, politicise the issue and sit in defence of a racist policy.
So there you go. They all had their say before him on this gang violence in London. They all did. They all had their say, and they all waffled, all of them, cleverly included. He was the biggest waffler on there. He'll be in my next little segment. But that was the good I saw. Fiona Bruce was excellent. Nish Kumar was again. He stole the show. He should be on there every single week, as far as I'm concerned. He was that good. That was the good. Now for the bad. Because there was some bad. And the first of all, let's go to the bad. I mentioned him in the last video. By the way, Nish Kumar also is getting a lot of credit in the press from other areas as well. It's worth mentioning. So here's the bad. Started off with James Cleverly. Now, I wasn't totally aware of James Cleverly and who he was and what sort of person he was until the last 6 months. And I've got to be honest. Every time I've seen him, I wanted to throw things at the television because I'm yet to see him answer a question. And that's not hyperbole. I think if somebody was to say, what is your name? He would say, well, what I'm saying is some people would say that, but when I was growing up, they called me Charlie, would you believe? He just will not answer a question. Fiona Bruce asked him 3 times. She badgered him 3 times. What is Theresa May's plan B? And he started off the question by saying, well, I'll tell you what Theresa May's plan B is, before going on for 2 minutes to talk about something that was totally irrelevant. Fiona Bruce, what is the plan B then? You haven't said anything. He's like, well, if you would give me a second, I'll tell you what the plan B is. Goes on to talk for another 2 minutes, doesn't explain what the plan B is. She asks him again, well, what is the plan B? And he avoids the question again. He's everything that is wrong with politicians. And I'm not even talking about what he stands for here and what his policies are and what he supports, which are horrible. Just answer a question. For crying out loud, answer a question. You serve us, remember? You're answerable to us. It drives me mad when politicians do not answer questions. And like I say, Fiona Bruce did not let him off the hook, which is why she was in the good part of these videos. But here's the bad part, especially about that first episode. First of all, obviously, he's one of the bad things about it, because he didn't answer any questions, but he was brought to task by Fiona Bruce, and I think she did very well. But here is really the bad thing about last week's episode, because there were 2 questions, or 2 sort of statements in that, and they were the best 2 questions or statements, I thought, in the whole episode. And they didn't talk about either of them. I'm hoping that I've queued this up correctly. I've got the right video.
Me, with a hat on. Yes, can somebody more who understands these things better than I do explain to me what the issue is about having a second referendum? In 2015, we had an election, general election. 2 years later, it was decided that we could have another one because we needed, or someone decided that we needed a fresh mandate. Now, I recognise that that wasn't a particularly popular decision to have so many general elections, but nobody challenged the legitimacy of that vote. Nobody said this is betraying 11.3 million people who voted Conservative in 2015. The facts had changed and people are entitled to change their mind. And here we are. Just one more. We were promised sunlit uplands. Okay, I'm not going to get into...
Is it not feeling very sunny?
No.
Everybody?
I don't want to get into whether people were deceived or whether people were lied to. I'm sure that the passionate Brexiteers made their points in good faith. The voters listened to them in good faith and they voted in good faith. But we were promised sunlit uplands, and what we've got is a dodgy deal that 80% of the population don't support, Parliament doesn't support, it's not going to get through. With respect and many apologies, listening to the voices, the political voices on the panel, they're not going to sort it out because they can't get it together. Listening to Parliament, it's a can of worms, and the only way to resolve it is to let people say, OK, if this is what we want, the dodgy deal or the no deal or something else, if that's what we want, fine, we'll deliver it. But for God's sake, tell us if what you've got now is what you thought you were going to get 2.5 years ago.
Okay, right. That gentleman made that statement and sort of question. Yeah, I suppose there wasn't a question in there, it was more of a statement, but it was ignored. They moved over it and nobody on the panel addressed it. There was two occasions that happened in that show, and this was the first one. Now, I really wanted to hear what people would say about that, especially the Labour MP who was there at the time, and for the life of me, Emily Thornberry's name escaped my head there for a second, but I really wanted to hear what Emily Thornberry wanted to say in it, but nobody addressed it. They just let the statement out there and nobody addressed it. I can give you what I would say to that. Well, first of all, you can't really, say, oh, they said some things that weren't true during 2016, because both sides did. Both sides painted the picture as being either the worst possible outcome with regards to those who wanted to remain, and painting the picture of the leaving the EU as the worst possible outcome, and vice versa, worst possible outcome with regards to actually stopping in the EU. They both did that. They tried to boil something that was the most complicated decision that the British electorate have ever had into a series of sound bites and slogans. 350 million on a bus. I don't remember the Irish issue being much of an issue back in 2016 during the referendum. Do you? So that obviously addresses one part of his argument, but the second part of his argument is he wants a second referendum. There's no he's got a very good case there saying, hey, we have elections, and 2 years later we had another election. It's different with a referendum, and here's the thing. We were well aware at the time that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I do find it hilarious at some people who were saying, "Oh, we can't have another referendum because it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," who were also advocating for another Scottish referendum. They are actually doing those two things at the same time, believe it or not. I'm not like that, but here's the thing: it was a referendum, and we knew that the decision was going to be final. All of us knew that right at the very beginning. And people voted leave. How is a second referendum going to change that? How is the second referendum going to bring the country together? Think about it. Look at the outcomes. What are the possible outcomes? Well, the possible outcomes are leave win again, which is a high possibility. I do agree with Theresa May when she says some people voted remain who now would vote leave. I do totally agree with that. I happen to be one of them. So what she's saying there is right. Just as many people have changed. And if you look at polling right now, all the polls pretty much have them in the same sort of ballpark as they were the day before the referendum in 2016. So if we do get the same result, are you going to stop then? Of course not. Of course you're not going to stop then. You're going to blame Russia and you're going to ask for a third referendum. And likewise, if Remain win this time, then the Leave camp are going to be pushing for a third referendum, and they're going to be saying it's done democratic. We are in a lose-lose situation here. All we can do is get on with it, and right now we haven't got people getting on with it. We've got people actually standing in the way of progress. That's how I would answer that question. I really wanted to see how the panel were going to answer that question and statement, but they just happened to ignore the two best statements that week, I thought. Here was the second one.
So I'm a special constable, and what that is a policeman with the same powers as a regular policeman but doesn't get paid. And some people call it insanity, and I tend to agree sometimes.
So do you agree with anything?
I agree all the time. If you're being a police officer and you're not getting paid, then you are insane. Yeah.
You've heard on the panel here.
Well, there's a lot of things I agree with in
Now, he's addressing the gang violence issue as well, just to get you up to speed.
terms of there are socio-economic reasons for it. Got fatherless families. There's poverty in there. There's all sorts of issues. But there's one thing that none of you have mentioned, and it's drugs, and it's government drug policy. When you hear about people stabbing each other over postcodes, they're actually stabbing over each other for control to sell drugs in various postcodes.
What he said there is absolutely correct. It happens in my area. There was somebody actually stabbed last year, not far from me, over this sort of issue. So what he's saying here is up and down the country. It's not just in London. I know it from personal experience.
So what would you do to answer the question to make London
First off,
streets safe?
if you legalised cannabis and regulated cannabis, not
See the people nodding around him.
only would that take a hell of a lot of power and control and money away from criminals, it would free up a hell of a lot of time for police officers, I can tell you that.
See, look at that. Sensible approach, backed up with experience. Round of applause from the audience. They love it. They don't get enough of this. Not on TV, anyway.
The amount of times we will stop someone, find a joint on them, very small amount of personal use, you've got to stand there for an hour, fill out community resolution forms.
You find a joint on people and you've got to stand there for an hour and fill out forms. For a joint.
Log into 7 different IT systems which are archaic. Takes up a huge amount of police time. And it just maddens me that no one in government is kind of ballsy enough to actually address drug policy. It doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. What are you going to do about it? Stay silent.
Well, unfortunately, they are going to have to stay silent because our time is up. I'm terribly sorry.
Well, look at that. Can't have the dirty weed discussed on the Beeb. So that was the bad of last week's question time. We've done the good. We've done the bad. The bad, obviously, was James cleverly not answering a question and politicians dodging questions, but Fiona Boost did hold him up on it. For that, I commend. And obviously, the bad was the two best things that were said on Question Time are from audience members that actually weren't addressed. And I hope that that trend does not continue. But next, we're going to get on to the ugly. Because a lot of people really did think that this was extremely ugly what happened, because this week Diane Abbott was on Question Time. Now she spoke for about 12 minutes on this episode. Diane Abbott did, and I've cut about 8 minutes together of this segment because I want to show you it all in context. Excuse me. Horrible cough. Apologies. So yeah, I want to show you all in context so you know exactly what is happening here, because there have been accusations that what happened to Diane Abbott was racist, was misogynistic, was that the audience were out together, that the panel were out together, and other things as well. And it's all been a big deal in the news this week. Like I say, I was going to wait 4 weeks before I did my assessment of this new ramped up Question Time. But after last week, or the most recent episode, well, I had to do it now. So this is Diane Abbott on Question Time. And like I say, I've clipped quite a bit here together so you can see it in full context. We'll go through it together and just assess it together.
What deal can achieve a parliamentary majority? Is there one, Diane Abbott?
So what deal can achieve a parliamentary majority? Is there one? That's the question.
I think that the parameters of a deal that the Labour Party would want to work with the government on would be a customs union. It would be a close relationship with the single market, and it would guarantee certain rights and freedoms, environmental standards, human rights, labour relations issues. And I have to say, people are saying that Jeremy Corbyn won't talk to Theresa May. In September, at Labour Party conference, in terms, the leader of the Labour Party said that if the Prime Minister offered a deal on these lines, a customs union, close relationship with the single market, and some guarantee of rights at work, he was prepared to work with her on it. And we heard nothing.
Well, of course, Diane.
No.
Right, okay, so she's interrupted her there, the lady to her left, and for the life of me, that lady's name escapes me, so I do apologise. She was asked a question then, and she hasn't answered it. So she was allowed, what, a minute of talking without interruption, and she hasn't answered the question. The question was, can a deal get through Parliament? And she's answered it by saying what we're saying, which is a politician's trick. So she hasn't answered the question. A week before, Fiona Bruce was pulling people up for doing that. She didn't with Diane Abbott. That's the first time she was asked a question on that show. This is about 12 minutes in. She hasn't answered it. Now she's being interrupted for the first time.
Yes,
because that is not what people voted for.
Just let me finish. We had...
Well, okay, I would immediately jump in then if I was Fiona Bruce and say, okay, we will let you finish, but can you answer the question? What deal can get through Parliament, and is there one? That is quite a simple question. Can a deal get through Parliament? Yes. Well, I think she could do it. Or no. Not, these are our 6 tests. That's a politician's answer. This is what we hate. I'm trying to be objective here. And so far, it's Diane Abbott that is actually avoiding answering questions, not other people are badgering her.
Nothing. The phone didn't ring. And after 2 years, for Theresa May to be phoning random Labour MPs last week was...
The question, can a deal get through Parliament? What is it? If it can. That's the question. So why is she talking about Theresa May?
Quite extraordinary. The problem has been all along...
No, we didn't ask you what the problem was all along, Diane. We asked you, can the deal get through Parliament? And if so, what is it? You know, can you see here, she's not answering the question.
That she didn't reach out to the House of Commons as a whole.
Okay, but hang on, Diane.
Wasn't the question, it wasn't the question, so Fiona Bruce, for the first time, jumps in.
Hang on, Diane. You've got a situation now where Jeremy Corbyn won't talk to Theresa May without a precondition. We'll get onto that, without no deal coming off the table. So he's writing to her, she's writing to him. Why don't they just talk?
We would have...
That's a good point.
We would have loved to talk. That's why Jeremy had it in his conference speech in September. And it's important to remind people of that.
But why not now? Why not now? Because now is now. There's no point in harking back to what was months ago.
But if you just...
Again, she's been asked a question. She wasn't interrupted there. She was asked a question leading from one of her questions. That's not an interruption. It's a valid question.
And also,
we'll be here all day if I let you
Jeremy
finish.
sometimes says you have to talk to people with whom you profoundly disagree. He was talking about Hezbollah and Hamas. Theresa May?
Whether you like that question or not, that's a valid one as well. If you're a Corbyn supporter, you probably won't like her saying that. But you know what? If the shoe was on the other foot, and you'd want her to say something like that, if it was linked with Theresa May, for instance, if it was about Theresa May. So, yeah, he's always saying that we should talk to Hezbollah and Hamas. Why wasn't he talking with Theresa? Fair point.
Just to get back to Brexit, the reason that we are saying that we wanted to take no deal off the table...
Nobody has asked her that. Can you see here? She's been talking now for 2 minutes and 37 seconds, and she still hasn't answered the question. Am I wrong here? Or she hasn't answered the question yet. She's done a lot of waffling. A lot of waffling that I might add, James Cleverly did not get away with the week before.
We thought that was one of the easiest things she could concede on.
Because it's the law, Diane.
Because
no deal is the law. That is what will happen.
So why was Philip Hammond calling business people a few days ago, promising them that Parliament could block no deal? We asked her to do that because we thought it was the easiest thing for her to concede. Even members of the Cabinet are against no deal. We know manufacturers in parts of the country like this are against no deal. It would be catastrophic. And actually, in terms of the safety of the realm, if we come out with no deal and no transition period, all sorts of security and policing arrangements will fall. We thought it was the easiest thing to concede. She hasn't conceded it. And if I was
it's not the easiest thing for her to concede, Diane.
Because her cabinet don't want it.
But you know it's not.
Again, Fiona Bruce is right here. It's not the easiest thing. So Fiona Bruce is right here. I'm just calling it the way I see it. And so far, 3 minutes 33 seconds in, it's Diane Abbott who's coming off worse here for not answering any questions and answering questions she hasn't been asked instead. And Fiona Bruce is pulling her up there and saying that's not true. And that's fine. From what I've seen so far, this is fine.
Cabinet don't want it. And if I was a manufacturer or worker in this region, I would be very frightened indeed that Theresa May still sees no deal as a viable option.
Well, Diane,
wait a minute, Rory.
It is simply impossible. Hang on, you've given me one word before you interrupt.
Let me just rewind that, just for a second. Remember, all the arguments are about her being interrupted. This lady, and I again apologise. I've forgotten her name, but she's literally just about to speak, and I think she got 3 words out, and Diane interrupted her. They tried to.
It is simply impossible. Hang on, you've given me.
It is simply impossible. She said 4 words, and Diane Abbott tried to interrupt her.
One word before you interrupt me. It is simply impossible.
See, now, because of that, the mood is starting to change. Now, because she's gone 4 minutes without answering a question that she's been asked. She's been speaking for 4 minutes in 2 or 3 different segments. She hasn't answered a question. She's been pulled up on not answering a question. She's gone on to not answer a question and just again do politician what we are saying, that sort of thing, which I can't stand. And now the mood is turning against her because she tried to interrupt somebody else who got 4 words into a reply. And the mood is turning against her. And now you're going to start to see people start to gang up on her. As soon as
Diane Abbott. This is the moment of compromise. Which red lines would you compromise on?
So which red lines would you compromise on?
We have said, and we've been saying it since last year, the things that we think are important.
Didn't answer it again. What red lines would you compromise on?
Are the customs union?
Customs union isn't...
Some sort of...
No, but we know what you think's important. Yeah. You said that at the beginning. Yeah. So what would you compromise on? Which red lines have you got?
So she's asked the question there. Diana's done again, tried to avoid the question, and Fiona Bruce again has pulled her up. This is Fiona Bruce doing good work as the chair. This is something I congratulated her for a week before. I cannot now pull her up and admonish her for doing the same thing just because she's doing it to Diane Abbott.
In a negotiation, you'd be prepared to compromise on?
We've not put forward any red lines. It's only the government that's put forward red lines. That's my point.
But hang on, no red lines is no policy. You have got a policy.
We have got a policy, and I've explained it to you.
Exactly. So are there any areas there that you'd be prepared to compromise on? A customs union, for example?
We're happy to talk to the government about some sort of movement on the customs union.
So she's not answering the question. You can hear the audience is starting to get onto her. She's not answering any questions here. Now, I understand she's being interrupted a lot now. At the beginning, she wasn't. She was given 2 minutes to talk uninterrupted. And now they're pulling her up because she's not answering questions. This is the way I am seeing it here, just trying to be objective.
Jeremy Corbyn is not talking to the government.
The only thing that we have said, and it's not popular with this audience, but I assure you it's popular
really
with
anybody, I don't
business,
think.
is that you have to rule out no deal.
What about the 6 tests that Labour have said? One of the most interesting ones, perhaps, is that whatever deal is done has to deliver the same benefits as being in the single market and the customer.
Yeah, that's a stupid statement. How can you have the same benefits of being in the single market if you're not in the single market? A stupid statement.
That was, in fact, David Davis who said that, and we were just repeating what he'd said.
So
okay, Diane, if you're repeating what he said, then you're repeating a stupid statement.
is that not one of your 6 tests?
It is one of our 6
Oh,
tests.
right, okay.
But what
All
we
right.
were doing was repeating what... Let me see, was that the
Well,
second
hang on.
or
Never
the
mind that.
third
It's either
Brexit
your test or
secretary?
it isn't your test. If it is your test, I mean, Michel Barnier has said that's not possible. Third countries cannot have the same rights and benefits. Would that be something you'd compromise on?
This is a fair question.
Unlike the Prime Minister, we are prepared to be flexible on everything.
She said there, flexible on everything, she said.
Diane Abbott, let me come to you. So would a people's vote, would a second referendum be anything other than democratic...
I know this is a lot of it, but I want to give you the context here and just for you to see what I saw when I actually came to the conclusions that I came
democratic catastrophe.
Because there's been a lot of talk about this and a lot of talk and a lot of labelling and a lot of accusations made by a lot of people that I don't think actually watched the whole thing.
Clearly you don't think that, because it's part of your policy.
Yeah, just to reassure some people in the audience, a second referendum, or people's vote, whatever you want to call it, is part of our policy package. We agreed it at conference. The first thing we have campaigned to do is to vote down Theresa May's deal, which managed the extraordinary thing of uniting both Brexiters and Remainers against it. It was such a poor deal. Now we are calling for a general election. We think that's the vote the public needs and wants.
Haven't got that.
But on the question of a people's vote, I don't think it's fundamentally undemocratic. In a democracy, you're entitled to change your mind. But let me say this, and I've said it in public before.
Actually, before you say that, can I just say, Jeremy Corbyn seems to be giving the impression of wanting to do everything but have a second
I've just explained to you what our policies are.
I know, but he doesn't seem terribly keen on it.
It's fine to have jabs at Jeremy, but let me just explain to you what our policies are. And
That's not having jabs at Jeremy, that's asking questions, and you're a politician, you should be able to answer them. That's asking very simple questions and you should be able to answer them. And she's asking them in the same way as she would do of anybody in the panel a week before, anybody else on that panel this week or next week. There's nothing wrong with that, and you can see Diane Abbott's getting rattled here.
what I'm saying is what I've always said. The thing about a second referendum is people should be careful what they wish for. My view, and I voted Remain, is that if we had a people's vote tomorrow, Leave would win again. And you just have a lot of very angry Leave voters. But there is nothing undemocratic about it, and it may be that in the end, that's the only solution there is.
The woman at the back.
I left that in for a reason. That's the first question that I thought she answered, and that was the last question she was asked.
I'd like to ask Diane, if Labour, who's desperate for a general election, if you don't get the result that we want, will we have a second vote on that?
That's a good point. That's a good point. That's basically my sentiments. Now, so what I've seen so far, if you're seeing the same as me, anyway, if you're seeing the same as me, is a politician who is stumbling and struggling, and a journalist who is attacking them and trying to get to the bottom of them, trying to make them look, you know, trying to get to the bottom of things, trying to get the truth, trying to get to, you know, what the policies actually are. For me, that was a journalist doing her job. I don't see Fiona Bruce or the other lady there with the blonde hair. Again, I've forgotten her name. I do apologise. I don't think that anything that they were doing so far is bad. I think that they gave Diane Abbott of 2.5 minutes to waffle on freely as she did, but that's a politician who was waffling and who finally people had enough, and you could see the audience was starting to groan at the fact that she wasn't answering any questions. That part of the show so far is fine in my opinion. However, we're about to get to the ugly bit. That wasn't the ugly bit. This is the ugly bit.
And let's tell them again if they can't deliver it. And I just want to pick up one thing that you said, Dan. I am bewildered as to why Labour is so keen for a general election. You are way behind in the polls. What makes you think that you're going to win? It is a damning indictment, isn't it, on your leadership, that even amid all this mayhem, you and your leader are miles behind the Tories.
Way behind in the polls, miles behind the Tories. That's the first two things were said.
This is a point of information. Currently, we're kind of, in the polls overall, we're kind of level pegging. We went
6 points behind.
You're behind, Diane.
Yeah. But
6 points behind.
we went into the last...
Did you hear Fiona Bruce there? You're behind, Diane. Definitely, she said.
General election, 20 points behind.
These are the recent polls. I mean, you can see here. I mean, somebody mentioned this on Twitter. Not only did they just take the one poll, which has the Tories ahead. I mean, there are other polls that other people have done. This is just a selection. But you can see all of these polls have Labour either level or ahead. But they've picked the one there. The Tories are ahead the furthest, the YouGov poll. So not only have they cherry-picked a poll to push something that is blatantly false, but they've also added a point on for good measure. Oh, it's 6 points. And actually, it's 5 points. That is very, very bad. Because that is the BBC blatantly cherry-picking information to make the Tories look good and to make Labour look bad. Up until that point, I saw nothing wrong with anything. I saw lots of things wrong because it was the BBC, but I didn't say anything wrong with the format and the questioning. I didn't see any bullying or any of the sort that has been alleged at Diane Abbott. However, that was very, very bad. They've made a statement. The BBC have. They said this: we've reviewed what was said. Repolling on BBC Question Time, a YouGov poll published on the day of the programme suggested a lead for the Conservatives. Diane Abbott was also right that some other polls suggested Labour either as ahead or tied, and we should have made that clear. As apologies go, that isn't one. Literally not an apology. They have cherry-picked information in order to push an agenda there and to push a pro-Tory, pro-government agenda. That's the only reason they can have done that. The only reason. That's one poll out of many. That's propaganda. Diane Abbott rightly said Fiona Bruce was clearly repeating Tory propaganda that Labour were behind in the polls. If she had said behind in one poll, that would have been a different matter. This is not an apology and does not address all of the issues that have been raised. Well said, Diane Abbott. Here's my advice. Start talking like you tweet. Because that was a disaster of a Newsnight appearance by yourself, and I suggest if you don't get better, Labour should maybe start sending other people to represent their party rather than somebody who refuses to answer questions and stumbles over every answer that they give. That's the good and the bad, the ugly of Newsnight so far under Fiona Bruce. I will be watching because I'm interested. I think that she has got the makings of a really good presenter and a really good host of that programme. And I'm hoping that she's allowed to do it and the BBC don't interfere. That's my hope. Of course, that's not going to happen. It's going to end up being a debacle within a few weeks. Some would say it already is. Hi everyone. But are you being fair with Diane Abbott, says Sue? Don't worry about failing to research the woman's name. I've forgotten the name. It's not that I didn't research her name. I've forgotten the name. I did research her, I've just forgotten it. I didn't see anything bad. I really didn't. Whether other people can see something in that I couldn't. I saw a politician that was stumbling over words, and I saw a journalist who was in attack mode, and rightly so. If there was a Tory in that seat, I would be absolutely baying for her to be doing the same thing. So, but the polling thing, that's propaganda. That's out of order. I didn't see anything wrong with the line of questioning. Diane Abbott I think she only answered one question on there, and that was the one near the very end. That's why I left it in there, because it was the one question she did answer. I didn't see her answering the others. If I'm wrong, let me know. I'll release this as a single video and leave it in the comments underneath. But I watched that episode twice, because I watched it once and my opinion was far different to what is being the opinion that is being shared on Twitter by most people. And I watched it a second time today just to make sure that I had my ducks in a row and I had my, how I felt about it right, and I wasn't too high when I watched it the first time. But no, I didn't see anything wrong with it. I'm just trying to be fair, and I'm trying to be objective, and I'm trying to get it right. I'm a fan of Diane Abbott. I like her. I think she's done some great work, but God, with regards to public speaking, she is one of the worst. She really is. Don't send her on Question Time anytime soon, Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party. That's the truth. I've got the feeling that it's detrimental to their support. And I know that sounds terrible, but I just get the feeling that she doesn't inspire people to vote for her, and she actually has the opposite effect, and people will get turned off when they hear her speak, and especially when they hear it was a terrible, terrible appearance. In a way, it's almost like, when I watched it, the first time, my thoughts on it the first time were, you know what, Diane Abbott is lucky that they cocked up on that polling thing at the end, because all the intention was rightly on that. But the attention that they were getting with regards to bullying claims, and they said it was racist, misogynist, it's none of that. I just thought that she was a politician who was struggling, and Fiona Bruce was a journalist who was being tough and fair, right until the point she said, "You're behind, definitely," and that's when she lost me. Are we into the next video yet, Tuesday? No, no. What have I got next? What have I got next? Ah, yes. I remember. Gordon Dimmack, you are not helping your opposition party. I'm not here to help an opposition party, and I'm not here to cheer on the Labour Party, and I'm not here to cheer on the Conservatives and all do anything like that. I'm not here to cheer on any party at all, Tuesday. Don't anybody get that notion. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to tell the truth based on the facts as I see it and based on the evidence at hand. That's it. If my findings are inconvenient for those who are Labour supporters, don't care. If what I think is inconvenient to Conservative supporters, I don't care. I realise that I'm going to piss people off no matter what I say. I'm just going to try and be objective and truthful and honest, because there's not enough of it. And I'm certainly not going to involve any of that bullshit propaganda that the BBC did at the end of there. Dimmack, you are slating Labour. Not Shazza. Not slating Labour at all. You are overlooking the countless other instances of Tory bias at the BBC, says Pam Ryan. No, I'm not, Pam. And no, I'm not. And I think you've been a subscriber of my channel for long enough to know that I highlight those instances of propaganda. I'd probably do it the most of anybody in this country, to be quite honest. Certainly on YouTube. I'm just trying to be honest, Pam. So, just trying to be honest based on what I can see. And what I saw there was a politician who was struggling. I didn't see any bullying or anything like that that was accused. But the propaganda, that really did need highlighting because, yeah, I thought that was unforgivable, and I'm hoping that the BBC will at least have the decency to make a formal apology at the beginning of the next question time. But of course, it's the BBC, so no doubt they've made their statement. Now they'll move on. Oh, thank you, Martin. Isabella Oakeshott, her name is. Yeah, she's a rabid Remainer. No, rabid Brexiteer, not a rabid Remainer. She's a rabid Brexiteer. I'm on the fence about her. She said some stuff that I really don't think is quite right. But some stuff that's good as well. She has been named and implicated in the Integrity Initiative scandal. She's vile. Just as I say, seen some good stuff about her, seen some good bad stuff. Somebody says, I'll check it into that, Martin. Thanks for the tip, mate. Link to the Integrity Initiative, eh? I'll check those documents tonight. Yeah, Pam, just to follow up on what Pam said there, Pam said it's all of a piece, Gordon. I think Abbott was subjected to uncalled for levels of aggression. I don't think so, and that was my that's why I showed so much of it. You could see there the beginning 3 minutes of that 8-minute clip. She was pretty much uncontested. Like 2 minutes 30 seconds, she was pretty much uncontested, and she was waffling with an answer. She didn't answer the question at all, and it's only when she kept not answering that. Then you heard the groans from the audience. Then she starts. Fiona Bruce starts coming down on her. That's why I showed the whole thing so you could see what I saw in context. I saw it play out. You could see people they were getting frustrated with the fact that she wasn't giving any answers. I was. That's how I felt at the time. So I understand that she is the focus of a lot of crap. And I've seen a lot of it online, and it's terrible, the abuse that she gets. But we have to be careful here not to go overboard and not to all rally round Diane Abbott because of the levels of abuse that she has got in the past, when actually, in this instance, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. She was absolutely wrong in her appearance. She only answered one question. I thought it was a terrible appearance. But at the same time, that was total propaganda by just citing that one poll. And getting the poll wrong as well, getting the number wrong. But so I understand. I understand, Pam. What about the sexist jokes at the beginning of the show before broadcasting began, says Nikki? The reason I didn't touch on those, Nikki, is because I haven't heard it. I haven't heard what the sexist jokes are. The jokes were something about Diane Abbott only being in that position because of the relationship with Jeremy Corbyn. And I didn't touch on it because I don't know exactly what they are. However, there are requests in for that footage to actually be shown and to be made public. So we'll see. And if it is made public, I'll report on it then. But I'm not going to go on, what one person said. We'll see. An audience member wrote about it. If she heard that, I'm not surprised that she was awful. Yeah, if she wouldn't have heard that, because that would have been obviously what before they all came into the studio with like the warm-up thing Fiona Bruce would have done. So, I mean, we'll see whether Diane Abbott heard it. We'll see when it comes out. I need to know the facts before I'm going to make any assumptions based on that. I can't make assumptions based on a rumour that something was said before the show. Mr. Massive Favour, she's horrific, Gordon. Isabel Oakeshott, daughter of Baron Oakeshott, privileged toff, wrote a book about Cameron porking the orc. Oh, is that who wrote it? Highly unlikely says her brief fling with JC was so long ago, ancient history, also irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. Okay. Let's get on to this because, yeah. So let's get on to this. I want to have a bit of a break. So, I've been going an hour and 20 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play my interview. Hi everyone, I've been Ian56 for you. And have a break and come back. And I've actually got another 2 stories lined up. So I might not be able to fit them both in, but this interview is 20 something minutes long. Enjoy. Hi everyone, I've been badgered by my my audience quite a bit to get guests on my channel, so I've decided that that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to start interviewing people, interviewing notable people in the news, and try and really break open a few of the stories that they have covered and they've been talking about. And the first on my list of people to interview is the geopolitical analyst, researcher and blogger. You know him off Twitter, Ian56. Ian, how are you?
I'm great, Gordon. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Thanks so much for joining me. I want to start off, you probably won't be able to hear this, Ian, but I want to start off by playing the interview that you had with Sky last year. Now, for those of you who don't know, Ian56 was outed by the Russian government, by the British government as a Russian bot. And he had to go on Sky and do an interview to prove that he wasn't a Russian bot. I know it sounds preposterous, but let's just quickly show you this. I've just clipped about 2 minutes of this video. Hopefully Ian can hear it and he'll know what's going on. Enjoy this because it's glorious.
Now, the British government identified 2 Twitter accounts specifically that they claim have been pushing a Russian narrative and spreading lies. One of them I've contacted, and we have him now live. He's called Ian.
Yeah, let's bring in Ian now. Thanks very much indeed for joining us today, Ian. So you've been identified by the government in this research as being a Russian bot, are you?
Ian, let's just go back to you. I've just played the little bit where they've asked you if you were a Russian bot. What did you think of at that time? I mean, you are a person looking at the camera.
It's ridiculous, because they after I got outed the Thursday night, I think it was, then they DM'd me. They contacted me via Twitter to say, "Can you do an interview?" And then I spent an hour off and on with the male presenter, the Alistair Bunkle. So I spent best part of an hour on Skype doing the ground rules for the interview. So I'm obviously not a bot, because I just had a detailed negotiation with him about what the rules were for the interview. Like, it had to be live because I didn't want it edited, and I had to have a decent amount of time. So I said at least 5 minutes, and eventually went to 7. So that was good. But those were the 2 rules that I had to. And they didn't want to do it live, of course, because if it wasn't live, then they'd edit the hell out of it and make me look like some nut, wouldn't they?
As they did with Craig Murray not long before, if I remember right.
Exactly.
So let me just play the rest of this. It's only about another minute, but it really is glorious. This is.
In complete fabrication by the UK government. Well, you had Major General Jonathan Swan on recently on Sky News. And he started off the conversation with, what possible motive would Assad have to carry out a chemical weapons attack when it was guaranteed that would bring the wrath of the whole world down on him and give the UK and US governments the pretext to bomb?
Ian, 2 questions.
Now, that guy who's just about to speak, was he the guy who interviewed? Was he the guy that you talked to before on the telephone?
Yes. He was the one that contacted me on Twitter and then asked me to DM him to talk about it. And then after, I don't know, 5 DMs or whatever, he said we'd talk on Skype. And then we spent the best part of an hour talking about what the interview rules were. So, I mean, how can you be a bot and negotiate what the ground rules are for an interview? I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I often think that some of these people actually don't understand what a bot is. And you see, yeah, my background is internet marketing, you see. So I actually used to have over 850 myself bots on Facebook. So essentially, I personally had more bots on Facebook than the entire Russian troll farm that was indicted by Mueller, which is, that just shows this is an internet marketing scheme. Let me just play the last, there's about a minute left of this here, and let me just play this, because I want the audience to see, you know, just the sort of crap that you put up with last year.
Is that the argument is that you have consistently and prolifically taken an anti-British standpoint.
No, I've taken pro-British line. That is completely false. What do you mean by Britain?
And you accuse the British government of mistruths.
No.
Let's just get back to the point about today, though, and the accusations today, Ian. You are denying that you're a Russian bot. You're saying you have absolutely no links with the Kremlin. So the material that you retweet, the government's identified 100 posts a day from your account, 1,300 posts in 12 days. How do you check the veracity of the information that you retweet, the people that you're retweeting? Do you know them? Do you have Kremlin contacts?
I have no Kremlin contacts whatsoever. I do not know any Russians. I have no contact with the Russian government or anything to do with them. I've got no contact with spies. I am an ordinary British citizen who happens to do research on what is going on in the current neocon wars, which are being fought in Syria at this very moment. I check out what is happening by credible journalists. Now, there aren't any of those on Sky News.
You check out your news from credible journalists, and there aren't any of those on Sky News. I just like that. I had to end on that because that was a beautiful thing that you did. Now, when that happened, obviously, you all of a sudden you're on TV and things blow up. Did you have an interview with BBC Newsnight, I heard, as well, set up?
Yeah, a couple of days after that, I had an interview with Gabriel Gatehouse from Newsnight. And he didn't agree to do a live interview. So I said, well, I'm going to record the whole thing then and put it out on the net. So he did the interview the day before it went out on a Tuesday on Newsnight, so it must have been Monday. So this Sky News thing was on a Friday. Then Monday I got collared by Gabriel Gatehouse and saying, Ben Nimmo is going to make all sorts of accusations about you, basically. So, do you want to answer for yourself? So I said yes, because I know I'm going to get screwed up by this. It can't do any more harm than what you're going to do to me if I don't agree to talk to you. So I agreed to talk to him. But I recorded the whole 13-minute conversation and then put it out the day before so people could watch it before Newsnight. That segment aired. It was a 10-minute segment on Newsnight, and they had about 4 minutes of Ben Nimmo total disinfo propaganda and 20 seconds of me.
Yeah.
Biased.
Now, of course, the lead up to this, to you being outed as a Russian bot, so to speak, it was quite interesting because first of all, you were attacked mercilessly by Deborah Haynes, weren't you? Was it Deborah Haynes in the Times that tried to contact you?
Yeah.
And shortly after that, Ben Nimmo did a series of tweets on you saying that you were a Russian bot and outing you as all sorts of things, didn't he? And then, obviously, there was this interview.
It was Ben Nimmo first. Ben Nimmo
right.
September 2017. So it was only after that 6 months of harassment and libels and whatever else on Twitter, calling me a Russian bot, Kremlin troll, all over the place. And I mean, they've got all their sock puppets and useful idiots that are working with them, if not for them, right? So that was all going on, and then in early March or something, I got contacted by Deborah Haynes. I can't remember what date it was, but then she contacted about 8 or 10 truth tellers who were telling the truth about the Skripals or whatever else the UK government was lying about. Right, so we had the Finnish grandmother,
Citizen Halo.
Citizen Halo, that's it. And we had Malinka from the UK and a few other people from the UK and a couple of others, one who lives in Switzerland, whatever. So it was about 8 or 10 she contacted. And could you tell me, you've been accused of being a Russian bot, are you?
Yeah, so she's not these journalists are not necessarily contacting you to get your side of things. They're just contacting you to see if you'll say something that they can put in their paper, isn't it?
Stitch us up. They were trying to get us to say something to stitch us up, right? But all of these people then replied back to her, right, in some, pretty polite manner. I mean, we could have sort of, told her to F off or whatever, couldn't we?
Yeah.
But none of us did that, and we all replied to her with a thing. And then most of us, after she did that, and after the story came out in the Times, so she published what the hit piece that she was going to do, the propaganda piece she was going to do, anyway in the Times, saying there's all these Russian bots about, but she didn't name anybody because she couldn't stick anything on us because we'd all explained our position and why we were saying the things that we were saying.
So that was Deborah Haynes in the Times. The Guardian, of course, have no such qualms about outing you, and it was them that outed you, wasn't it? Given their journalistic practices, it's not surprising that it was them. What was the reaction? They left, if I remember right. I'll put the newspaper clip on the screen now, so people will know what we're talking about. And they said one bot, Ian567889, had sent over 200 tweets over so-and-so period. Now, what I want to get to is something that you said in that interview with them, which most people would have glossed over. For me, being in this sort of genre, for me, I thought it was a really important point that people didn't pick up on. Because the guy was saying that you are pushing tweets with an anti-British British feeling behind them. It's anti-British. Now, you specifically pulled them up on that and said, no, that is not true. I'm pro-British. And this is something that I want to really, for personal reasons, because I love Britain. I love my country. I think it's wonderful. However, it's got some bloody problems, and I think we need to highlight them to get through that. Why do you think that there is such a disconnect between people like you and I who are pro-Britain and trying to do things good for Britain and trying to rest on the side of truth and facts and morals? Why do you think that these reporters are so blinded and they think it's anti-British to be actually talking the truth?
Well, I know for a fact that Alistair Bunkle is completely brainwashed and ignorant about stuff. He's been a journalist and reporting on the war. As he calls himself a journalist, he's not that. He's a propagandist. But he's been reporting on the war, the neocon war, ever since just after the Iraq invasion. So he said he went to Iraq. I don't know exactly when, but after the invasion, but all the trouble was kicking off, all the civil war was going on and whatever. So he thinks he knows about Iraq because he walked a few Iraqi streets. Well, that doesn't explain why the Americans or Tony Blair invaded Iraq, does it? He hasn't done any research into why they did it. Right? He's completely clueless about everything.
Yeah, I'll come to that. That's an important question you're saying there. You've got to realise why they're doing it, and that's the question I want to come to at the end. The one question I really want to ask you is, why do you do it? I know why I do it, but why do you do it?
I started off watching 9/11 happen, and I thought, this isn't right. And then I started researching about it and all the background to it. And then I stumbled across PNAC and what they were doing, and all saying, well, they've been trying to invade Iraq since 1998. What? Have they? They've been trying to invade Iraq since 1990. What's going on? I never heard about this. So then I started digging into all the PNAC stuff and Dick Cheney and Paul Wolfowitz and Donald Rumsfeld and what Tony Blair was up to, and that he went to Crawford Ranch, and then he was all pally with George Bush. They walking around like a couple of gunslingers, weren't they? Like the Wild West. Yeah. They had on all their leather jackets. And
with their arms out wide to make themselves look bigger.
Oh, I'm going to pull out my guns and shoot some people. What a couple of woolies, eh?
So you just thought this is bullshit. I'm going to start investigating because I want to find out what the truth is.
To stop them invading Iraq, okay? Right, so I was posting online wherever I could about this is a load of garbage. They're not doing it because of WMDs, because there aren't any. They are doing this to completely destabilise and muck up the Middle East and Iraq.
Yes, absolutely. It's really quite funny when I listen to some journalists on TV. They either just don't know what they're doing, or they're totally detached from reality. Totally detached. It's quite obvious why people are doing things, and which brings me to, I'll put on screen in front of my face right now the graph that has been tweeted out by that conspirator O, which is sort of one of the Integrity Initiative sock puppet accounts.
Well, it's got to be linked somehow to it.
Yeah, they take the Integrity Initiative data and then publish it, and then tag all the journalists from the Integrity Initiative and all the people that the anonymous files have outed. They tag them all in. So, and this has been going on quite a while. So this is how they sort of spread this information out. And it follows all the worst people like Michael McFaul and Caroline Orr and, you know, all the warmongers. But it was this graph really that gave me an idea, because your name is prominent on these graphs, and there's another graph I'll show here of the people who have large followings that tweet out words containing neoconservative and neoliberal. And one thing I've noticed is, since you've seen that graph, and you are the biggest node on that graph, every single tweet that you've made seemingly since has contained the words neocon, neoliberal, warmonger, Rothschild, the lot.
I did anyway, but I mean, I'm making a push to do it more.
Do you wear that? Seeing your name on those graphs, is it sort of like a badge of honour? Because I know I was quite disappointed.
Red rag turbo. Why? Oh, they're calling me out on it. I'm going to do more then.
Yeah, I was quite disappointed that I couldn't find my name on there. So I'll maybe next year. Maybe next year. What do you think? Obviously, you've been keeping up on the Integrity Initiative scandal, this Orwellian, Machiavellian, mockingbird-like organisation that has been set up with the Orwellian name Integrity Initiative. I always think it's interesting with these names, because they always mean something, especially with the Conservatives. They've always got a really dark meaning underneath them.
The exact opposite of what they call it. So Integrity Initiative has got zero integrity, because they're shells for warmongers and tell loads of lies, and they haven't got any initiative because people have been doing war propaganda for 100 years or more.
Now, sorry, Ian, carry on.
So but all of these things that whatever they name them, you can guarantee that the real meaning of it is the exact opposite of what they're doing. So, I mean, the Ministry of Defence. What does the Ministry of Defence do? It makes war, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not anything to do with defence. I mean, the Pentagon doesn't defend America, and the British military doesn't defend Britain, does it? It makes more enemies for Britain by going out and bombing people. So, you know, it's the opposite.
Absolutely. The Integrity Initiative, I've shown how the Skripal, I'm thinking the large stories over the last 2 years, there are three, aren't there? There are the Skripal affair, there's Russiagate, and there's the Duma chemical weapons attack, which, I mean, you and I desperately looked for evidence, and we could find none, and all the evidence that we actually found said that actually there was no chemical attack here. It was a false flag. Robert Fisk did some fantastic work on that. Do you think they're linked, as I do, and it's all some part of some conspiracy, and these stories are linked in some way?
Done by the same people, aren't they? All getting pushed by the same people. They're all linked in together, and they're all part of the propaganda war. They're all part of the same propaganda war.
The question I keep asking, Ian, is are their antics getting seemingly more and more desperate, especially in the media? I think you'll agree that the last year the media have just lost the plot, haven't they?
They're becoming so obvious, yes.
Yeah. Do you think that this is all to try and cover up a cock-up, or do you think that this is all aiming towards, World War III?
Well, they're pushing conflict with Russia to increase military spending for the arms company profits, aren't they? That's the first level. They want to provoke conflict with Russia and then get loads more military spending. So Britain's supposed to be spending more on the military, isn't it? And they're trying to get the EU countries, the NATO countries, to spend more on the military, and then they stir up all the trouble in the Middle East and recruit terrorists, and then Saudi Arabia does $100 billion arms deal with Trump, don't they? Because if you're in the business of selling weapons, Lockheed Martin is not a defence company. You know, it's another example of the exact opposite. What is Lockheed Martin in the business of?
It's an agent of war.
More war, so I can sell more weapons and make everyone less safe. That's the opposite of defence, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's so indoctrinated in America. I mean, it is over here. I mean, in America, there was outrage a few weeks ago because they found out that Lockheed Martin and Boeing were sponsoring the Girl Scouts. It's like, well, that's part of the course. They sponsor school projects over here, so indoctrinating people into their way of thinking at an early age. What I want to end on, Ian, if that's okay, is do you think that, I mean, you've been following these stories right from the very beginning, these three main stories that, you know, just seem to be false and seem to be pushed non-stop by our mainstream media without any evidence. Do you think the truth will come out, or do you think that this is going to be another one of those situations where the truth all gets swept under the rug?
Well, they're not going to volunteer the truth. So, I mean, it's like the JFK thing, right? They've never said the truth about the JFK assassination. And it's been 55 years or whatever, isn't it, since then?
Yeah, that's my worry, you see. I'm worried that it's going to end up another situation like that.
But that's what we have got to do. As activists, we have got to keep pushing the truth. We have now got the internet. They didn't have the internet in 1964 to tell people that they're all lying about JFK and the Warren Commission is all a setup. Right? And you couldn't research stuff very easily in 1960s, could you? You couldn't find out this stuff. You had to go to a library and read government papers and stuff like that. It's almost impossible for normal people to do research. But now anybody can do research. If they put some time and effort in, anybody can go around searching on the internet and see what they can find on a particular subject, can't they?
Absolutely, absolutely. We've got the answer to almost every question in the world at our fingertips. We really are living in we're quite fortunate to be living in this day and age. You say there we've got to keep pushing, we've got to keep highlighting. Now this slide that I'm showing here, this is that graph that shows you and George Galloway and all the people that have been tweeting out stuff about the Integrity Initiative. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on is because what I want to try and do is get as many people from this graph on as possible, because this is obviously a pain in the ass for them, isn't it? And they have unwittingly really highlighted to us who all the truth tellers are. And it's backfired on them. And now what I want to do is get the people on and try and connect them as much as possible, because those nodes, we need to make these as loud as possible. These are the people that have been telling us the truth. What do you say?
Exactly. That's exactly right. We've got to think, what is the last thing that the Integrity Initiative and the Atlantic Council want us to do? What don't they want us to do?
They don't want the truth out there, mate.
They want to get together, keep spreading the truth and keep sharing the information amongst each other and helping each other to find out what is going on, and then doing YouTube videos like this one and putting it out on Twitter and whatever else. So whatever we can do. I mean, they use the term amplify the message, don't they? Well, I mean, they want to amplify their message and censor and suppress our message. So we've got to turn it around, don't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely, that's the great idea. Is there anything you want to leave on, Ian, before we leave? Thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
No, but I just encourage people to get the word out. Just be on Twitter and expose the lies, expose what the truth is. Tell people what is going on and why it's going on, right? They're
Absolutely.
not doing anything. The UK government doesn't do anything for altruistic purposes. It's doing it to make money for somebody, isn't it?
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Ian. I really appreciate it. Keep fighting, keep strong, and we'll try and get these nodes as loud as possible in the coming months to try and get the truth out there, because we really are in a fight at the moment.
Okay, great.
Thanks very much for your time, Ian.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. So I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. It was good. It was good chatting to Ian. Thoroughly decent bloke who's just trying to get to the truth. And I love the way he starts off every tweet with neocon warlord, warmonger, neoliberal, all the words that trigger all the alarms on the integrity and initiative systems. I love the way he concentrates on that. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed that interview. I'm glad Ian said he enjoyed it as well. I'm glad he did. It must be nice for him to be interviewed by somebody who isn't out to get him, because the other interviews he did, obviously, that was the case going into it. Everybody in the chat seems to like it anyway. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you enjoyed it, everyone. I'm gonna try and get more people from that graph that I showed you, because that's where we've been getting the truth from, and these are the people that we need to elevate, and these are the people we need to be sharing links to on Twitter to get them to rise. And we need to stop sharing stuff from the Daily Mail and the Sun and yada yada yada, even if it's just to say we hate those people. If you want to say that, take a screenshot. It's really easy to set up your snippers. I've got them on my dashboard, my snipping tool. You'll have it if you've got Windows 10. And just put your snipping tool on your dashboard. That's what I do, and just snip them. If it's The Guardian, I'll snip that, upload it as a picture on Twitter, and then tweet, I hate this arse gravy of a newspaper. Because you share it, an algorithm just thinks that's a vote for that. That's all it thinks. So unwittingly, by sharing their work, we're actually helping them, even if it's just to say, look at this arse gravy. Algorithm doesn't see that, just sees the vote because you press share. So we need to share the people on that graph and ignore the people who have been ignoring to us, like those in the mainstream. Wow, 178 people watching. Wow, I better do another story, keep you all happy. I saw this not long before I came on air, and people have actually been talking about it in the chat, so they obviously want me to talk about it. Hi everyone. So mainstream media writers in the mainstream media, for the main newspapers, are just not just in the UK but over in America as well, are completely out of touch with reality, completely out of touch with what the progressive agenda is. If you want to be classed as a left progressive or right progressive, doesn't matter. If you're right on the policies, that's what matters. That's what matters to people like me. That's what matters to people who have woken up, so to speak. So there was this young lady, Bari Weiss, on Joe Rogan. I watched Joe Rogan, and I actually started watching this interview and turned it off after about 10 minutes because I realised that this was somebody who didn't have a clue what she was talking about, and certainly did not capture the public mood. Ben Norton did watch it, and he clipped something up. He said this: neocon New York Times columnist Bari Weiss smeared Tulsi Gabbard. Did she really? Who bravely opposed regime change of US support for Salafi jihadist Contras as an Assad toady. Then couldn't spell define toady or offer any evidence to prove her smear. Embarrassingly funny. I am going to play this.
Kristen Gillibrand. Oh, monstrous.
Monstrous?
Ideas.
So did you see that the subject of Tulsi Gabbard came up? Joe Rogan mentioned Tulsi Gabbard. I think they're talking about, the 2020 hopefuls for the Democratic Party. And she immediately go, is it disgusting ideas, did she say?
Kristen Gillibrand. Oh, monstrous.
Monstrous.
Monstrous?
Ideas.
Well, when she was 22, she had...
No, she's an Assad toady.
An Assad toady? Well, there's a word I haven't heard. What does that mean?
What does that mean?
She is
What's a toady?
I think that I used that word correctly. Jamie, can you check what toady means?
Like towing the line? Is that what it means?
Just quickly. This is a New York Times columnist who doesn't know the meaning of words that she says. This is your mainstream media, folks.
No, I think it's like a... Toadie.
Wrong, Toady. So not only does she not know what the words that she uses means, but she also doesn't know how to spell them. New York Times columnist.
What does that mean?
I think it means what I think it means.
Toady. Definition of toadies. A person
A
who
sycophant,
flatters or defers to others for self-serving reasons.
A sycophant.
No, you didn't kind of use it right at all. You got that totally wrong, and you're trying to dig yourself out of a hole. New York Times columnist doesn't know the meaning of words that she uses or how to spell them.
Sycophant.
So she's an Assad sycophant. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So she's an Assad sycophant. Now, this is something that's been aimed at Tulsi quite often. I'll come back to this in a minute. But this is something that's been aimed at her quite often. And Joe Rogan said that, yeah, she had some bad ideas when she was, back in 2002, when she was 22. And obviously she was indoctrinated into like an anti-gay lifestyle throughout all of her life. Nobody's born homophobic. This was a slur that was cast on her. And obviously her opinion on us that has changed as she's got older and she's evolved. Go and ask anybody who was around in 2002 whether they were anti-gay. My guess is a lot of people would say yes that aren't now. So people do evolve. Now the other thing is the Assad apologist, and they all say, oh, she's an Assad apologist because she went and met Assad. And then she came back and said, yeah, we should stop arming ISIS and Al-Qaeda. That's why she was... See, if you're against Assad in that war, in the Syrian war over there, and you're pro the other side, what you just did is you came out and said, I support ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And this stupid woman, who is a columnist for the New York Times, who doesn't understand what words mean or how to spell them, she has essentially come out and said, I am pro-ISIS and pro-Assad because we don't like Tulsi and she is pro-Assad. So she's pro-ISIS and pro-Al-Qaeda. That's who Assad is fighting. This is something that Tulsi Gabbard tore a strip off James Tapper when she came back in, and he tried this interview tactic with her. She blew him out the water, made him look stupid. And now this girl is being outed all over the internet right now today as being the stupid idiot that she is. I'll let this continue now. I have so much to say about this.
Yeah, that's known about her.
So, what evidence? Oh, it's just known. What's the evidence that she's an Assad toady, as you call it? Oh, it's known. So you're not pointing to any evidence? It's known. This is your mainstream media.
Like, what did she say that
we have to look.
Her?
I don't remember the details. I've read it.
She doesn't know the details. She just made an assertion based on something other people have labelled at her, have accused her of, and just said, I'll go along with that without knowing the facts. Mainstream media.
We should say that before we say that about her. We should probably read it, rather.
Well,
Right, now Joe Rogan's being Joe Rogan. Hold on a minute. What has actually happened here? What really are we getting to here? Because what he's like me. Let's see what the facts are here and disseminate the facts, shall we? And now she's starting to panic, I think.
I have read it.
No, I mean we should now.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Just so we know what she said.
Look up
I've had her
Tulsi
on
Gabbard.
Here before.
Look
and
up
I really enjoyed talking to her. I like her a lot.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I like talking to her.
Okay.
I like talking to her. I don't know about.
I think she's like the motherload of bad ideas.
Can you point to any? Or just a sad toady?
Whoa.
I'm pretty positive about that, especially on Assad, but maybe I'm wrong.
You are very wrong. And you're a New York Times columnist.
I don't think I'm wrong.
Well, my take on her was that I think as a person who's coming from the left, who's also a veteran and is very articulate and sensitive.
Yeah, veteran. 2 tours. One in Iraq, one in Kuwait. How many tours of Iraq and Kuwait have you been on, Bari Weiss? Voluntary tours, by the way. Smearing a 2-time veteran as an Assad toady with nothing to back it up.
And a woman, and in talking to her, we didn't get into Assad or any of those things. but talking to her about what she feels is wrong with the current administration and the way things are running and a direction she thinks things could go in, she had some very promising ideas. I didn't know about this.
But doesn't she also, did she ever apologize for believing in conversion therapy? I
didn't even know she believed in conversion therapy.
Am I crazy?
I don't know whether you're crazy or not, Bari Weiss, but you're dumb as a bag of rocks. I'll tell you that much. I suggest that you and people like you should actually start learning and reading about things before you make assumptions on it. This is what Tulsi Gabbard is up against, folks. The mainstream media. That's where the opposition is going to come from. Tulsi Gabbard's opposition is not going to come from the Republicans. It's not. The Republicans are scared of her because she would beat Donald Trump. She would definitely cause him some serious problems if she became the Democratic nominee for 2020. But that's not where her opposition is going to come from. Her opposition, Tulsi's opposition, is going to come from what they call is the left, what is actually the centre-right, and that's the neoliberal DNC, with the help of their mainstream media sycophants like Bari Weiss. Or should I say, Toady? Because that's what she is. There you go. That's how to use the word correctly, Barry. I suggest you get a dictionary for Christmas. New York Times columnist. That's the standard of our media, folks. Hi, everyone. You're not crazy, little precocious, but you are stupid as hell, says Covert White Rabbit. Yes, you are. Yeah, I did. I'm glad to. You may not have all agreed with me on the Diane Abbott section, but I think everybody's agreeing with me on this one. That woman, God, that was bad. That just 1 minute and 56 seconds. That was just awful. Well done. I think it was Ben Norton, wasn't it? Yeah, there you go. It was Ben Norton that did these tweets a few hours ago, so shout out to Ben. Great journalist, by the way, Ben Norton. Great journalist. I am positive Barry supported Clinton. I'd be amazed if Bari Weiss didn't. I would be amazed. Yeah, she's got the word in her head because it's her identity, says Telkaris. It's one of those buzzwords that she's heard in the office. That's what it is. She's heard people say it in the office, so she's gone along with it. That's it. She hasn't actually looked at the facts. Because if she looked at the facts, there's no way you could come to that opinion. None at all. And if she's looked at the facts and came to that opinion, then I'm sorry, Bari Weiss, you're even fucking dumber than I thought you were. Oh, dear me. The stupidity, it burns, says Covert White Rabbit. Right, let's get to this last story I have. Have I done everything on... yeah. There's another story I want to get to. We've been going some time, haven't we? Nearly 2 hours? 2 hours and a minute. Whoa! I'm getting quite comfortable doing these live streams, guys. Two's Time says, please check out Kill All Normies on the problems of identity politics. Will do, mate. Will do. Hi, everyone. So, Tucker Carlson did an interview with a former Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI, I think his title was. And this has been doing the rounds on social media, and people are aghast at what this FBI director said. And I want to shine a light on it for a couple of reasons. First of all, the cable media in America is obviously awful. I have done a rundown of the cable, what I believe were the best cable news stations in America, of all the top ones, and Fox came above CNN and MSNBC. It was quite some way above them, to be quite honest, and my reasoning was occasionally on Fox you get the truth. And occasionally, on Fox, they'll invite on progressives, you know? They'll invite on Glenn Greenwald. They'll invite on Carl Kalinske. They'll invite on progressives and get a progressive point of view. CNN, MSNBC, the supposed left, or the leftist of them all, on cable news, they won't touch a progressive with a 10-foot barge pole. And if they are, they're bringing them on like Susan Sarandon and blaming the whole 2016 loss to Donald Trump on her. But Tucker Carlson is one of the better news reporters in America. He's horrible. I absolutely, totally disagree with 90% of what he says and what his ideology is. But occasionally, you get little snippets of truth, as people have shown in the past. But I want to come to this because Matt Taibbi is how I found out about it, because he tweeted this out. And I just want to quickly show you this, because it really is enlightening what this guy says. Take a listen.
When you take the election and you take the House and you now convert all the committees that you have to investigating various aspects of the President of the United States, then your lifeblood has to be to react to stories. So you're going to see more stories planted so that all these committees can have a lot of work to do. And I think this is just...
Let me just stop it there. So he said there, they're talking about this story from BuzzFeed. Now, this is the latest Russiagate gotcha, the latest bombshell, the latest smoking gun. Apparently, Donald Trump, they say in this story, directed Michael Cohen to lie, which obviously meant the Senate Intelligence Committee went, hold on a minute, if he's done that, then we need to start impeachment proceedings, to which Bob Mueller said, hold on a minute, that's not the case, and had to come out and make the unprecedented step, take the unprecedented step of actually issuing a statement saying that this is not entirely true. And we should get that we shouldn't put too much weight behind it, because first of all, there are two writers there, Jason Leopold and Anthony Cormier, and even they can't agree on actually what was said and what the feeling around what was said between Cohen and Trump was. This is one of those stories that just was a big gotcha, and within 24 hours everybody went, ugh, like has happened a million times before with Russiagate. Honestly, it's got to be... I saw something a couple of days ago. There have been over 50 stories since this Russiagate stuff came up 2 years ago that have been debunked as false. Over 50. And they're all one way. They're all, hey, Russia's the bad guy, Trump colluded with Russia. They're all that way. They're all lies going that way. They're never falsehoods saying, oh, Trump's innocent. They're all saying Trump's guilty. Putin, Russia, Trump, WikiLeaks, hack, DNC. Constantly. It's a barrage. And I'm going to play that for you again, because there's a word there that I picked up on that he said that I want you to, within the first 20 seconds, just listen to the word he said.
When you take the election and you take the House and you now convert all the committees that you have to investigating various aspects of the President of the United States, then your lifeblood has to be to react to stories. So you're going to see more stories planted so that...
Did you hear it? More stories planted, he said. He said that he thinks that's a plant. You know what? I agree with him. I'll come back to that at the end. Let me just play the rest of this segment. There's only about 30 seconds left.
All these committees can have a lot of work to do. And I think this is just more of the same. And I think we can expect more of this because, quite honestly, the electorate in some places is putting more and more progressives and self-described socialists in positions. And ironically, years ago when I first got into the FBI, one of the missions of the FBI in its counterintelligence efforts was to try and keep these people out of government. Why? Because we would end up with massive dysfunction and massive disinformation and massive misinformation. And it seems to me that's where we're at today.
Wow. Let me just quickly show you. Watch Tucker Carlson's face when he says that this story is planted. Watch his face. You ready?
A lot of work to do. And I think this is just more of the same. And I think we can expect more of this because,
quite honestly,
this is just more, a lot of work to do. And I committees can have a lot of work to do. And I think this is just more of the same. And I think we can expect more of this because, quite honestly, the electorate in some places.
I think Tucker knows that this story's been planted. But that's the former Deputy Assistant Director to the FBI saying, this story was planted and we're going to see more of the same, because at the moment they've got the House and they're obviously trying to do certain things, and they're going to have this story planted in the media to stop progressives getting into power. And he's saying, well, that's what we used to do. This is a planted story. We used to stop progressives getting into power, getting into office, and they are at the moment. So that's what this guy is saying, and that's why Tucker Carlson is smirking his ass off, because you shouldn't really be hearing this on cable news. Which leads me to this, because if this is a plant, is this from the same people and from the same sort of establishment and the same people that were behind this one? About Manafort holding secret talks with Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy? Because what I've discovered over the last couple of days, if you watch my video I did yesterday or the day before, it looks like that this was planted by the agencies for them to then use it, the story that they planted, as the excuse to go and interrogate Ecuador ministers, people over in the Ecuadorian embassy over there. So just the same as they're alleging at the moment, some people with the Russiagate, that the Russiagate was all started with Joseph Mifsud, and they're using that, those meetings that they initiated as the precursor to start this Russiagate investigation. So you can see here they're doing two things that are really quite similar in two different areas. It's all tied together. I wanted to show that because it's very rare that you get so much truth on cable news, especially in America. But again, it's Tucker Carlson that has pointed it out, and that's, I think, the third or fourth instance in the last year of him actually having some truth and talking some truth on his show. Don't get me wrong, the other 98%, not worth it. But it's better than the other TV anchors on CNN and MSNBC, because 100% of what they do is total and utter crap. More of that. We have more of that. I'll be out of a job soon. Hi everyone. All right, that's it. That's all I've got you. Just, I think I had a couple of super chats come in while I was doing the other segment, didn't I? So I'll just check that. Did anyone see Jamal's video about Cenk winning outside to talk about the BuzzFeed bollocks? No, I didn't, Nikki, but I saw Cenk's video. It's the dude. Come on, man. I've got so much respect for you. You basically wrote the book on how to be a YouTube news presenter. Have you not learned in the last 2.5 years? Have you not learned a goddamn thing? If a story comes out about Russiagate, wait a day. For God's sake, wait a day. Because if you wait a day, history over the last 2 years has told us in every single instance you won't end up looking stupid. But he runs outside and does it. Oh my God, Trump is done, he said. Trump is done. Based on one report, thinly sourced. Thank you, Bella Bella Lou. It's very nice of you. Damn, that man is risking a bullet, says Keith Durant. He is talking that much truth on the TV. What's the matter with you? Yeah? What's the matter? Say hello. Say hello. I think I think she wants some attention, don't you? You want to wee-wee? Yeah, she wants to go out, so we're going to let her out in a bit. We got him, says Big Dad. Yeah, did he play that, did he? All right, that's it. My dog wants to go out. Now, Ellie, go and lie down. Go on. My dog wants to go out, so I better go and take care of it. I'll release the videos that I recorded tomorrow, and I'll also, I've got plenty of videos planned for tomorrow and the day after. There should be plenty coming this week. Now I've got all my equipment where I need it, and the setup perfect. I think the green screen's pretty good now. You can't really see much of the lines or anything, so it's actually won't be as good tonight because this is a green shirt, but I'm glad at least I can wear it. It wasn't a main. But thanks very much, everybody. Let's check the super chats, just make sure I'm up to date. I don't want to miss anybody. Yeah, if I could give you all a recommendation, set up a Coinbase account. Use Bitcoin. I've got a feeling that it's going to be used quite a bit in the future. Wrong one. Community. Kinky says, keep up the good work, Gordon. Give me a good overview of UK politics. Thanks. Thank you, Kinky. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much to everybody who supports the show. Thank you anybody who likes and comments on the videos. I really appreciate it. It massively helps with the audience and growing the audience. Thanks to everybody who shares and all the nice comments, and obviously all those who can support me on Patreon and PayPal and Bitcoin. Couldn't do it without you. And I'm just getting started, everyone. So yeah, there's much to come this year and the years to come. Awesome. Thanks very much, everyone. Peace as always, and as always I shall leave you with my sentiment: free Julian Assange. Talk to you all tomorrow. Peace.